Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have a question. With thousands of U.S. soldiers deployed on American soil to quash demonstrations, are Democratic politicians right to warn us about the country's slide towards authoritarianism? Let's get to the bottom line. The Trump administration's aggressive crackdown on immigrants has led to fierce pushback from protesters and open sparring between local officials and the federal government. Americans are now evenly split on immigration, with at least half of them supporting deportations of people who don't have residency papers. But this divide goes way deeper. What's at stake, according to the opponents of U.S. President Donald Trump, is the very soul of the nation. Does America want to be a place where mass federal agents arrest people off the street and in their homes and whisk them off to overcrowded detention centers? Do all politicians have to express their undying thanks and loyalty to the president all the time? And throughout all the changes sweeping the nation, where is the second biggest party, the Democrat Party? Where are the bold alternatives Democrats are floating as an alternative? Today, we're talking with one of the leaders of the Democratic Party in Congress, Representative Rohit Khanna, who represents the district known as Silicon Valley. Congressman Khanna, it's really great to have you on the show again. And look, I mean, we're living in a moment that not many of us thought we were going to be in. We're having, right now, the President of the United States is deploying 4,000 National Guardsmen to quell protests in Los Angeles about immigration. This is the deployment of federal force against American citizens inside U.S. borders. Just love to get your thoughts.
Well, it's unconstitutional. I mean, the reality is that we need to unequivocally condemn people who are attacking law enforcement or trying to vandalize federal property or cars. But the appropriate remedy for that is the state police, the local police. You don't bring in the federal troops, Marines, to deal with something like that. And you certainly don't override a governor. So the issue here is less about where you stand on immigration, less about where you stand in condemning violence against law enforcement, and more where do you stand on the Constitution.
Well, in this battle in Los Angeles, and I want to move beyond this topic to the kind of the broader macro picture, Governor Gavin Newsom of California has protested, has said he's going to take this to the courts. Donald Trump has threatened to jail him. I mean, this is a kind of rhetoric between government officials we're not used to. If Donald Trump were to jail Gavin Newsom, you know, would this cart go off the rails? Would Republicans find itself that this was disagreeable from their perspective? I'm just interested in what can send a shot across the bow, if you will, of the presidency with regards to this kind of deployment of power.
Well, jail him on what charge? I mean, Gavin Newsom is the governor of a state who was actually trying to deploy state police to help manage the situation. Even Steve Clemons said that it walked that back. So I know Trump thinks this is a war of words, but the reality is that it's doing enormous damage to the Constitution. There is enormous damage in terms of dividing this country. There's enormous damage in escalating things. And people just want common sense. I mean, they want Democrats to condemn violence. They want the Republicans to say, no, you can't have the Marines go in there. And they want secure borders and a path to people who are here, hardworking, paying taxes, having a path to legalization and citizenship. I don't think that this is a difficult issue if politicians were solution-oriented instead of scoring points.
You know, as long as I've known you, Ro, you have talked about spreading out success in the country, giving opportunity in the country beyond, you know, you represent Silicon Valley, so lots of, you know, zillionaires there who've done very, very well, but you've gone to parts of the country that were not parts that were particularly friendly to Democrats, and you've talked about spending that opportunity economy around. You've talked about progressive capitalism and trying to kind of find a way out of the classic box of progressive politics into something that appealed to others. And I'm just interested in this moment. You know, how is that going from your perspective? And as we see this toxicity between both parties right now, is anyone else trying to find that common ground?
Well, I believe that the central challenge in the country is that, look, you've got $14 trillion in my district of Apple, Google, NVIDIA, Tesla, and Broadcom, five $1 trillion companies. And so many other parts of the country have seen hollowing out, manufacturing leave, people's pride taken away. And many of those communities built America, right? We should celebrate the hardworking folks who built the steel, who mined the coal, who built the aluminum and the ships that got us our freedom. And what I've said is that we've got to have a common mission again, so that the economic prosperity isn't just in tech centers or financial centers, but that we're building things across this country. We're preparing people for the technology jobs of the future in AI. We're understanding, I mean, China is going to have AI literacy for everyone by the time 2030. We have to make sure our citizens understand the tools of AI. We're investing in communities. I called for a White House Economic Development Council, a 21st Century Marshall Plan in America, where we recognize that modern prosperity isn't going to be just through blanket tariffs or going and trying to conquer Mexico or Panama, that we're going to build wealth in every community across this country.
So when you kind of take that message out there, is it resonating? Because what you see politically, a lot of black voters, a lot of Hispanic voters have been moving a little rightward. You know, you've had President Trump really harvest a lot of working class Americans. So my question to you is, given the trends that we saw, you know, in the election between Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, are you beginning to feel some of that outreach to some of those Americans that feel demeaned and neglected and left behind? Is that working for you?
We have a lot of work to do, but I think that what Americans want to see is respect, that they're hardworking in their communities, and then they want to see a real plan and a vision. How did they build economic security? How do they build economic wealth? Donald Trump gave them a plan. It was the wrong plan. He said, I'm going to give blanket tariffs. I'm going to stop immigrants from coming here, and then you're going to have a better life. And he's a billionaire who people trusted on the economy. Now they're seeing that that isn't working. It's not like there are new factories coming up across America. It's not like they're building more economic prosperity. What I'm saying is, look, let's have a 21st century plan for how you have economic security and economic independence. Let's make sure this is in every community. And let's make sure we respect the people to be local, to be able to have local culture and understand and appreciate it. I do think that people are open to that, but we have to earn that trust back.
What are the bold moves the Democratic Party needs to do to reinvent itself and resell itself to American voters?
One, we need to respect American voters. We need to stop making people afraid of speech, afraid of being judged if they say the wrong thing, afraid of telling an off-color joke. As long as they understand that there's respect as citizens, we've got to lighten up a bit and respect people in a big tent. The second thing is then that we need to have a real sense of a vision for all parts of America, that we understand how communities have been stagnating and struggling, and how hard it is sometimes where kids have been leaving towns. Towns have been stagnating, losing church attendance, hollowing out, where folks are struggling to pay childcare, medical bills. And we have an actual vision for people's economic renewal, economic security. And it's a common mission for the country. And then finally, I think people want to have a hope again in America, to believe in America. The Kennedy years, the years that my parents came here, where America was the place to be, where we were an example to the world, we were humming and doing big things, and to have new dreams. I think people are hungry for that. They're exhausted. They're embarrassed. They're tired of threatening each other, threatening to arrest each other. They want us to work towards a common vision for this nation. And that's I think, what the country desperately needs.
You look at the most successful place on the planet, it's the district that you represent. And that's because of the free flow of capital, of minds, of intellectual capability. And it just seems to me that there's a giant rejection of that going on right now. Does that give you concerns?
Well, there's anger in America. There's anger in America because a lot of the places were hollowed out when NAFTA and the China's essentially the World Trade Organization. Globalization and automation didn't work, not just for white working class Americans, for a lot of black Americans in factory towns in Milwaukee and Detroit that suffer. And they saw wealth pile up in certain places, but it wasn't just wealth. It was also social prestige and recognition. and the people who said, we fought for this country, we built things, we worked hard, felt ignored, abandoned. And so Trump comes along and says, no, you're the part of America. I'm going to respect you. And he's taking the sledgehammer to the parts of America that they thought had gotten too much recognition. Now, my view is I don't think you take a sledgehammer to the parts of America that are prospering. I think we have to bring this country together so that we have economic security, economic prosperity, and all across this country. And that means recognizing that science and technology investments are good, that universities are good, that we do need to welcome continually the best and brightest, but that we have to be focused in not recognizing that there were too many places abandoned, that we need a diversified economy that respects manufacturing and work with people working with their hands, that we need to be looking at how do we bring modern wealth in every part of this country. You know, the Ming Dynasty in China, 1400 on, stopped all their ships from going to other places, and they stopped trade, and they stopped engaging with civilizations. And it took 300 years, but then basically China stopped being a great power and was colonized by European powers. What I tell people is, fortunately, Donald Trump's not going to be in charge for 300 years. He gets 8. But we've got to have a much more robust economic patriotism that's not an isolationism going forward.
When it comes to the immigrant issue, has he put the Democrats in a position where they are having to defend the rights, civil rights of non-citizens? I mean, I'm just interested in this cross pressure of what do Democrats come out standing for versus what Donald Trump is putting forward. And when I look at something like immigration, where there was kind of growing concern, even on, Democratic-run cities like Chicago, Boston, New York, you had, this kind of building up as an issue during the Biden administration, and a lot of people felt like it didn't get there. And it put, certain people that were saying, hey, we want to, care about all rights of all people, even those that are here without, legal protections, that we want to protect them. But has it put the Democrats in a box that's hard to get out of?
Well, I think the Democratic position has got to be that the Constitution requires certain due process of every person. That's a patriotic thing that we do here in America, that most immigrants who come here, like my parents, come here to work hard, to have their kids work hard, to contribute, that my parents talked a lot more about my responsibilities than my rights. They said, you were born here, you won the lottery, work hard, learn about the country's history, become very strong in English, because having the strength in English makes you be strong and successful in America. I remember my mom sitting on a kitchen table with note cards with vocabulary words so that I had the best understanding from her perspective of a ninth grader could have of the English language. And I think that story of immigrants, the true story of immigrants who want to embrace so much of American culture, who want to understand and revel in American culture, of course, they came to America by choice, is often lost. And you see these unfortunate incidents of some immigrants committing violence or, not having the American flag, waving it with pride. And that's just not the story of immigrants in America. We have to tell the story that John F. Kennedy told, that Barack Obama told, of immigrants as patriots, of immigrants as part of the Team America, and that all of Team America is going to lead the 21st century. And that I think can resonate in communities across this country. How do I know it? Because I grew up in a 99% white community in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I felt I could do anything, and I felt really part of the community.
Another bit of the story I want to tell our public about you is, all these captains of industry, AI, essentially tomorrow's technology innovations. Many of the people who put them together, but one of your old relationships is someone who's been in the news a lot, and that's Elon Musk, who himself was an immigrant to the United States, became incredibly powerful as the sort of first friend of Donald Trump. And they've had a nasty divorce. I don't want to get into all the details of the divorce unless you want to, but it's just, here's the richest man in the world, who's a friend of yours, and the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, having a divide. But one of the questions, and I'm sort of interested in, is where does that go, and what does it say about the United States, which is always about checks and balances on power, that we have two giant super sons of power and there doesn't seem to be much constraint on either one except each other.
Well, it says that the country needs much stronger checks and balances, starting with banning super PAC money. I mean, no one should be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't care if you're Elon Musk or if you're someone on the Democratic side. That's just fundamentally anti-democratic. But Musk, I think, left because of the isolationism that Trump represented. I mean, Musk is an international student himself. He doesn't believe we should ban all international students. He doesn't believe we should have blanket tariffs on every country. He doesn't believe that we should be gutting medical research or clean energy tax credits. And he doesn't believe in exploding the deficit just for tax breaks for no end to the wealthy. And so there was so much that he disagreed with that you hear tech leaders saying under their breath, and Musk kind of brought it out to the surface. And so I think what this is going to do is really expose how Donald Trump is not good for the innovation economy. And I think what Democrats need to say is we recognize that we made mistakes as a country in so many parts of America that helped build America in making sure that they participated in the economic future. And we're going to now make sure that we're speaking to that with a common vision.
You know, one of the things that animated Elon Musk and others as well from Silicon Valley, I would, put other people, perhaps potentially like Mark Andreessen, other folks, that hadn't really been deeply involved in these issues, was a sense that they were vulnerable, that there was an over-regulatory approach to what was coming in the future of AI, what was coming in technology platforms, et cetera. Do you think that the leaders of your party have learned that lesson, or is regulating that industry, more tightly still part of the DNA of the leadership of the Democrats right now?
I think it was that they didn't feel self-respect, just like or respected. And just like there were too many parts of the country who were steel workers or auto workers, and we didn't go and say, you helped build America, thank you. You built this country. A lot of the tech leaders felt they became the bad guys, that they were all responsible for all the problems, as opposed to saying, thank you for creating new technology. Thank you for being innovators. Yeah, we want to tax you more because we need to have taxes to pay for childcare and healthcare, but we fundamentally respect you. And I think a lot of times people reduce politics to economics, but my agenda of an economic patriotism is not just about economics, it's about respect. And I think technology leaders need to be respected as entrepreneurs, as wealth generators, as helping contribute to the country. And then we can debate the taxation and childcare and healthcare policy.
With economic patriotism, and you and I have talked about this before, and I find the concept very attractive for a lot of people. How do you approach some of those that have begun to approach Donald Trump and sort of give them a home in that space? How do you take that notion and spread it out so it becomes a different star, if you will, to follow in that economic equation?
I think you say, if you're on Team America and are going to invest here, we want you on our side. But then, look, our vision of economic development is going to also involve labor and unions, and it's going to make sure that there are higher wages. I look at someone like Bill Knudsen for FDR, who was at GM and Ford, but then he helped start the War Industrial Board. And that was something that industrialized America, but also lifted workers. Why don't we do something with AI called a future workforce administration? The college unemployment rate for college graduates between 21 and 29 is 15%. That could go up to 30%. How about we have something that employs young people to do different tasks, whether it's civil rebuilding of our agencies, whether it is making our digital infrastructure better, whether it is our public infrastructure, our climate resilience, or renewable energies, so that they get experience before they go on to the private sector. There's so many things we can do. But the core tenet of a new economic patriotism is the highest goal has to be the economic development and success of communities and families across this country, and preparing America to lead the 21st century in the economies of the future.
Ro, I'd love to get your take on two of the nasty places out in kind of the global foreign policy scene, one Ukraine and the other Israel, Gaza, and deal with this. President Trump seems to be wanting to extract America from both of those, and I don't know, maybe hope they go away or that there's a new resolution or a new deal. Do you have any kind of insights into what you think would be a smart policy, both to deal with, the Gaza challenge and Israel and Ukraine, Russia?
Well, Ukraine, we can't appease Putin. I mean, if we allow Putin to just take 1/5 of the country, which is what he wants, then who's to stop Xi Jinping from taking 1/5 of Taiwan? I am for supporting Ukraine. Now, people say, well, how do you end the war? And I have supported, even to criticism in my own party, diplomacy while we support Ukraine. So we should be supporting Ukraine. We should be facilitating diplomacy and seeing how we can come to a resolution which doesn't require Ukraine to give up 1/5 of its territory. But the dressing down of Zelensky or the abdication of the defense of Ukraine is very short-sighted, because it's basically telling authoritarian governments they can go conquer land. On Israel-Palestine, I mean, I have always supported a secure Israel as a democratic state and an ally. They're very interconnected, obviously, with Silicon Valley. But what's going on in Gaza is heartbreaking. When you can't push all the Palestinian population down just to southern Gaza, and you can't talk, as Trump and others have, of resettling Palestinians into Jordan and Egypt, or conquering or redeveloping Gaza for economic purposes. You need a secure Israeli state as a Jewish democratic state, and you need a Palestinian state with the help of Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United States should help be working towards that solution, a Palestinian state that's recognized without Hamas. And I believe that is the vision forward.
Do you think that's one of the balls and chains that was around President Biden and then Kamala Harris's profile, was the failure to take a bolder step on Gaza and Israel?
I think economics and the border were the first two. I mean, we didn't raise the wage, we didn't tax wealth, we didn't deal as boldly as we could have with the inflation. I mean, I had an op-ed in 2022 saying, why don't we use the National Guard to actually deal with the logistics issues? Why don't we make sure that we are going after and subsidizing food prices like FDR did during that time? But yeah, I don't think Gaza helped.
Finally, how many years is it going to take for you and your colleagues to rebuild the Democratic Party into something that is back in power?
A year and a half. I think we're going to be back in 26. This is a country where the pendulum keeps swinging. It's one of the beautiful things about American democracy. 9 out of the 10 elections, there's been a swing of either the House or the Senate or the presidency. We were at 27% favorability around 1989, and then you had Bill Clinton. So I think that you're going to have a robust Democratic Party, and that's good for the country. We need robust parties on both sides. But what we do need is a new generation that's going to focus on solutions, bringing us together, having new, big, bold dreams for the country again that involve all of us, not just the particular states or districts we represent.
Terrific. Well, that was great conversation. Democratic Congressman Rohit Khanna, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Steve. Really an honor. I appreciate your voice.
So what's the bottom line? For decades, people around the world really couldn't tell the difference between America's big two parties, the Republican and the Democratic parties. But then Donald Trump came around and he argued for an America less engaged with everybody else, with higher walls around it. And that was just wildly different than Kamala Harris's focus on identity politics, with America still doing what it always had done in its sprawling national security interests globally. Trump was the revolution, and Kamala Harris was the status quo. For Democrats to come back, as my guest has said, it will require a new boldness and a willingness to tear part of the Democratic House down and just rebuild it. It failed, big time. I'm not sure whether it can be done, but Representative Khanna is among the few leading Democrats who's willing to genuinely provoke the stay-the-sameism of much of the Democratic Party blob. And that's the bottom line.